In the studio is former First Minister of Scotland and Alba party leader, Mr. Alex Salmond. Alex, a very good evening to you and welcome.
Good evening, mate.
Great to have you back. I mean, there's so much to ask you about tonight because I was saying to the panel a little bit earlier, here we are in the midst of all manner of crises, you know, which start at the NHS, go all the way through the dreaded road problems that we've got, rail problems that we've got, all the way through to defence budgets not really being big enough for what might happen in the next few months or years in the world. And all we seem to have is two parties that want to accuse each other of racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. You know, it's all about, you know, calling people racists, and it's not about fixing the country's problems, seems to me.
No, maybe they are racist.
Maybe they are.
They might both be right. I mean, I'm fascinated by Boris Johnson. I mean, that man is amazing, you know. If only he'd been Prime Minister,
yes,
think the world would be a
if he had the opportunity to do something.
But he's campaigning in the north. He's campaigning in the north.
Yes.
I wonder if he'll cross the border to Scotland. We've got very strict public nuisance laws in Scotland.
Well, maybe you did have, but whether now Humza Yousaf could get himself organised well enough to get anybody arrested at all, apart from members of the SNP government, I don't know.
Yeah, that's true as well, yeah.
You know, they're a bit busy at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah.
Very busy. I mean, they can't get out as much as they used to because, you know...
See, Boris, obviously, look, the solution is... I can't understand why there hasn't been a draft Boris campaign in the United States of America.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about the one democracy in the world where Boris Johnson would be regarded as the best candidate. He'd be regarded as up and coming, the young man about to make his mark. I can't imagine why there's not a bigger demand, given somebody who was born in America, that he could be drafted in the last minute to take on the two geriatrics.
Well, interestingly enough, he gave up his American citizenship, I think, didn't he, in order to...
I don't think that matters. I mean, get it back again.
I think the Americans don't like it, though.
It certainly wouldn't matter to Boris.
No, it wouldn't matter to him. But the Americans don't like it very much. If you give it up, I'm not sure they want to give it back to you. But also, he's not right-wing enough to be drafted by the Republicans, and he's not really left-wing enough to be drafted by the Democrats. So he sort of sits somewhere in the wrong place in the middle. I'm
sure Boris could accommodate whatever was required.
I'm sure he could. But I'm not buying that he and Sunak have made some kind of pact with the devil, because Nadine Dorries, who's much closer to Boris Johnson than either you or I are, says it's all a crock of nonsense, and it's basically just Sunak trying to reach out to make it sound to those who like Boris Johnson that he's part of the deal.
Well, desperate times require desperate measures.
Indeed. And also, we've got this ridiculous situation which just broke. I don't know if you've seen this, that there's now going to be no investigation into what happened between the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, and the Leader of the Opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, on that fateful day when it all went sort of, you know, what can be described as the wrong way up, shall we say, in Parliament. And for the first time ever, the debate was kind of completely and utterly cancelled.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, Neil Hanvey, the Member of Parliament for Kirkcaldy, the Alba party leader in the Commons, called this right. I mean, instead of moaning on about the Speaker, who clearly was in the wrong, and etc.
Who admitted it.
But well, but replacing, you know, one incompetent speaker with another incompetent speaker is neither here nor there. The attention should be immediately on Starmer, and as to whether he'd murmured, is the word, the speaker.
Yes.
He'd acted improperly in influencing the speaker. But now, of course, the three deputy speakers have all ganged up to say that they're not going to be allowed to have a vote on this, which I find very interesting, because, look, the Commons ultimately is master of its own procedures. And if a majority says we want to have a vote on it, we're going to suspend standing orders, and we're going to vote on a motion, then I don't see how the three deputy speakers can stop that.
Well, it seems as though they've simply stonewalled the application from Plaid Cymru and the SNP and just said the reason we're not going to look into this is because it would completely ruin the possibility of any future conversations being had in confidence by the Speaker with anybody else. Well, that's ridiculous. That's like saying, you know, I'm not going to get into an investigation into what may have been some kind of criminality involving members of Parliament because one of them needs to remain confidential and have the ability to keep having confidential conversations.
Yes, and the idea you can't do anything improper in a confidential conversation is ridiculous. I mean, most improper things are done in confidential. I mean, most people have to do things improperly, not broadcast it.
Yes, exactly right. And what about the state of affairs with this donor, this Tory party donor, who's now been revealed, to me, much less importantly, as perhaps potentially a racist, but a man who's in receipt of hundreds of millions of pounds of government money, which to me is far more difficult, I think, for the Tory party to explain away.
Well, you know, there often is a connection between, or some people believe there's a connection between successful health technology companies and the health service and the political parties which run the health service at that time. Let's put it that way. But I've got a solution for Frank Hester. I mean, what he said was objectionable, it was silly, it was racist, even dangerous. I mean, you shouldn't talk about, you know, shooting.
Well, Rishi Sunak at least has said it was racist tonight.
Well, it took him a while. But I've got a solution for Frank Hester, right? You know, forget, you know, the apologies, forget Carter Rock, his very, very expensive company lawyers. What to do is to give, I mean, he's obviously, we say in Scotland, he's got more money than sense.
Yes.
So why doesn't he give...
But unfortunately, a lot of that money is ours because we've given it to him.
Well, possibly. So he could give some of it back. How about £20 million? Double what he gave the Conservative Party in one of the worst investments of all time, but double what he gave the Conservative Party to help job opportunities for ethnic minority kids. Barnett consequentials for Scotland, of course, as we would expect. So if he makes that big donation to demonstrate he's not a racist, that'll do him far more than denying it from time immemorial.
Unfortunately for him, though, he apparently does already employ quite a number of people from various ethnic minorities and refers to them in what can only be regarded as a rather derogatory way.
It's time for Frank to make the grand gesture. And I've also got some more advice for Keir Starmer, you know, who's... I mean, Diane Abbott, I've got... I defend Diane at every opportunity because she once voted against me being unjustly expelled from the House of Commons.
Well, nothing like loyalty, Alex,
well, exactly.
Well, no.
So Keir Starmer suspended her from the Labour Party.
She's still suspended?
Yes, for what I thought was an ill judge. I mean, well, firstly, it was ill judge writing to the Observer. I mean,
that is an idiotic thing to do,
You know, sanctimonious pile of nonsense that it is. But nonetheless, I mean, it was what she was trying to say was that people of colour, it's obvious they're discriminated against all the time. And she mentioned, I think, Jewish people, Irish people, travelling people. It was a daft thing to say, but she did apologise. But I think
lots of people say a lot of daft things around race, don't they?
So Keir Starmer can now, tonight, show his concern for the lady who was the first black woman member of Parliament and also who defended me when others didn't.
Yes.
And he can readmit her to the Labour Party.
Well, I wonder why he hasn't.
Yeah, well, why doesn't he do it now?
Well, why hasn't he done
it
already?
He can demonstrate that he's on the side of the angels where you'd want to be.
Well, I'd be surprised if he doesn't do it if that's the advice you've given him, because at the end of the day, he wants to be on the side of the angels. However, what can you say about a man who takes an opportunity from a book publishing company to write an autobiography about himself, then realises halfway through that most people who write autobiographies have actually already been Prime Minister, and so now the book is not an autobiography anymore. It's a biography by Tom Baldwin, who's now written it, who was probably writing it anyway, but now it's not an autobiography. I find that very confusing.
Well, I mean, you've just said it, and I'm still finding it confusing. But look, we've solved Frank Hester's problems. That's how he can get out from under. We've solved Keir Starmer's problem, and we've done a good deed for Diane Abbott, who's been unjustly put upon. What more can we do?
I think there's nothing you can do to help Rishi Sunak. I think that is a dead duck, and I think that is as dead a duck as you
even
can see.
Boris Johnson may have difficulty rescuing the Prime Minister, much as though he will try.
Much as though he'll try, or indeed even rescue his own reputation. But that's another story. Alex, great to see you, as ever.